just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your
It's that time of year again where the air is cold and the Camaro is shedding its leaves on the ground. Okay, gauges. Right now we have none of them. I got a sender here and I got some wiring and we're going to start putting them in there so I'm not flying blind anymore. And as much as I love Jesus taking the wheel, I actually am kind of curious as to what oil pressure this bad boy is actually putting out, if any. All right. I got my little GM one-wire pressure sender, and then I've taken the stock oil pressure sender lead, and I've just crimped on the connector for it. So we're gonna pull the old 3-wire pressure sender out, put this 1-wire pressure sender in, and we're gonna see if it works the gauge. I don't really need it to read super accurately. I don't really care. I know this motor is a piece of crap. I just want to know if I have any oil pressure, and if it goes to 0, then I need to know, shut the motor off. Alright, old one with the funky unit out, new one in. Now, I don't actually know if I have a socket that's going to work with this, so I'm going to have to dig in my crap first. I could have swore I had a socket. Well, oh well. Well, the auto parts store's sockets didn't fit, and I don't want to wait a couple days for a specialty socket to fit, so we are going to do something truly sinful to this 27mm socket I had laying around. Behold my genius. So we're going to start that oil pressure sensor by hand, and we're going to see if this bad boy works, and beats spending $15 on a socket. Just the weight of my brain, the sheer density of it, sometimes it hurts just to carry it around every day. It's a little too much. It's hard. It's become hard to live with. That's the ticket. Just do something so unabashedly low class and redneck and just see how well it works for you and you'll get hooked. Got my wire hooked up. Time to learn the truth. One gauge down. Boy, am I glad this junkyard motor paid off. I was so worried when I took it apart and saw how sludgy it was that I would be dealing with probably a rebuild project over next winter. But that's really encouraging oil pressure numbers, and I've been keeping track of the engine coolant temperature sensor with a scan tool. And I'll put in a temperature gauge next just to make sure the gauge works and it's something I can monitor on the dash. But looking at the scan tool, temperatures are reading good as well. So I'm pretty sure this is a healthy motor. Okay, temperature sender time. This one's a 3-wire one because you can't run the gauge off the 2-wire one that's for the ECU. So we're going to go on the other side of the car here on the passenger side head, run this 3-wire one, and we only need 1 wire from that to run our stock gauge. Put a little bit of thread sealant on that sensor. Voila! Sensor's in there. Okay, I'm not sure which one of these 3 wires runs to the gauge. I just know one of them does, and I'm pretty sure it's the blue one that's on the bottom of this 3-wire like triangle-shaped connector. So I'm just going to strip this temperature sender wire from the original harness, and we're just going to kind of join them together temporarily here, and we're going to see if that works the gauge. And if it does, then we'll make the connection permanent. Well, now I'm chasing down another wiring issue. Plug in my alternator and I get a buzzing noise. What do you know, my Chinese wiring harness is just an absolute mess of electrical tape. But for some reason, the port for the scanner, the OBD2 port, the TAC wire, and the alternator wire are all getting voltage from the same fuse in this harness, which is not supposed to happen. This one white wire feeds the OBD2 port. And they were just like, oh, these wires are also white. Well, let's just wrap them all together with electrical tape and throw it all together in our harness. And now that's causing me a bunch of issues. So I got to figure out which of those white wires goes where. But yeah, if you buy one of these Chinese like $70 LS swap harnesses, you're going to have issues. But it is better than spending $1,000 for a painless harness. -1 trillion social credit to whoever built this thing. Okay, I fixed it. I just took the tack wiring out of it completely, so it's just the OBD2 circuit, and if I get the tack wired up later, it's just going to have to be its own thing. Okay, we got the wires sarcophagused and zip ties again, and now, when we reconnect the alternator wire, I shouldn't hear any buzzing. Alright, we're going to keep going on the gauges here. We'll figure out what's wrong with the temp gauge, but meanwhile, we're going to dig in and we're going to put this V8 RPM tack board in there so that our tachometer works, and wire it into the ECU wiring out there. And there's a little bit of a trick you got to do to make sure that the pulse you're getting from the ECU is actually going to drive that tack board. And then I bought this bag of LEDs from
朋友是一个坚韧
and we're going to go ahead and install them in the gauge cluster here. So that's the plan. Well, here's the old tack board. It's a V6 tack board. All you gotta do is undo 6 nuts right there. Pops right off. We'll slap that new one on. Then we'll replace all these bulbs back here with LEDs. And we'll take a look at that temp gauge just to make sure nothing's fishy behind there. And then we'll put it back together. Well, it's nighttime, and here's the finished product. You know, I thought these were white LEDs, and they didn't give me enough for that one corner there. So I'll probably go back in and switch these out to white, because I don't really know if I like the deep blue. It's not the most readable thing in the world. It's honestly more of a purple. But at least all the gauges light up now, which they definitely didn't used to. I had half of the bulbs burnt out in here, so an improvement. Alright, we're going to try to get the tack working. From everything people are telling me online, I can just tap into this wire here, and I might have to add 12 volt as kind of like ballast power, but we're going to see if it just works straight up. So we're going to pull the wire out of the tack there and send it here and see what happens. Whoop-a! There's a tack wire. We'll splice into that and run it all the way around, and we'll see what we get. Okay, let's just give this a try, and let's see if it works without any added 12 volt power. Let's give it a double check here. Yeah, 670 RPM, we're reading like 400. Let's see. Yeah, not quite right. So let's add 12 volts and a resistor to this, and let's see if it gets any better. Okay, so all I did was shoot 12 volts to the fuse box through a resistor, a 1 kilo ohm resistor, following this diagram, which I'll put on the screen here. And let's see if that helps it out at all. That's a bummer. Alright, so I got my laptop and the tuning module hooked up, and we're just going to go into the file here, the tune file, and we're going to see if there's any parameters that we can edit that has to do with what kind of pulse the ECM sends to the tack there. There we go, tack output. Type, yeah, 12 volt pull up. This is fine. Online, somebody similar that did this, I think said 3 and 3 is a resolution, and that kind of makes sense because we're cutting our resolution by 2, and what that's going to do is output double the RPM at the tack, and that makes sense because if you look at the video, it looks like about half the RPM is what the tack was outputting versus what we're actually picking up on the scanner. So this is all I'm changing. We'll go in and we'll save our file here. Okay, now we're going to write it to the car. I have, if you're ever doing this, I have a battery charger hooked up right now. You need that because if your voltage gets too low while you're flashing this to your ECU, you're gonna break your computer, and it's really easy to break these stupid computers. So, write completed. All right, so now we can close this. We'll shut down our HP tuners here, and we'll plug our scanner back in, and we'll compare RPM output this time. Alright, engine RPM, like 700-ish. Look at that, 760, lines up real nice. Let's give it a little blip. Alright, 3100 to 3100. Good stuff. All right, working tach. All right, let's count our gauges here. Our fuel gauge works, our battery gauge works, our oil pressure gauge works, our tach works, our speedometer works, but it's off. Our coolant gauge is the only thing still giving us grief. All right, well, we got it running. I got a multimeter looking at the kilo ohms that this thing's putting out. And then I've got my scanner looking at the same number. We're gonna let them warm up and we're gonna see how it compares to this table that I'll show you on the screen here, which has got all the resistance values that really matter for the sensors that run the gauges in these cars. So, all right, well, it's kind of up to temp. You can see it's right around 0.4 kilo ohms, and our temp is right around between 160 and 170. Now, that's exactly what I should expect, so that I know that the sender on the engine is not bad, which unfortunately, which I really didn't want to happen, means that the problem is with the wiring or the dash cluster or the gauge itself. So we got to find a short somewhere. All right, that's pretty accurate. Take a look at the scanner. Just a tad off. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll show you what I did. So I went to the engineering library at my university, and I went ahead and got one of those free resistors that are for engineering projects, 50 ohms. I put it right in there, and that smoothed out the imbalance right away, because as those temp sensors heat up, the amount of ohms that it's putting out matters a lot more once you get hotter. And I think what it was happening is just that little bit off, that once you climbed up the edge of the scale where it's really touchy, it's just pegging it all the way. So it's fixed, and that is all the gauges. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one, where I'll do a full breakdown of all the parts I used and how much I spent. But for now, thanks for watching.